Get me that signal. We need more power.
I am on board the Alert, a yacht out of New Zealand. Despite the odd appearance of the crew, I have taken passage on this ship to further pursue my investigation. We are bound for South Africa, but my apprehension is growing, and I fear that we may never reach our destination. The crew has become increasingly silent, and I feel a projection of vague hostility toward me, bordering on hatred. I have taken to keeping in my cabin and only venturing out when absolutely necessary. Even the cabin boy, who was initially as open and jovially conversant as any normal youth, refuses now to meet my eyes when bringing my meals. If I attempt to speak with him, he simply sneers maliciously and retreats. I have not seen the captain in several days, and from the primitive calculations that I have been able to make from the small porthole in my cabin, I am persuaded that we are much further north than we should be if proceeding directly to South Africa. I fear that the truth of my investigation has been discovered, and that the crewmen of the Alert are also somehow connected to the insidious evil I have unwittingly revealed. You see, there are horrors beyond imagining living just outside the confines of our own fragile reality. They wait for the opportunity to encroach into our world, to devour and enslave humanity. I have recorded the course of my journey, which began with a simple game that I happened across in my uncle's library after his funeral. Since that time, I have crossed the globe attempting to thwart this evil whenever I could. I fear that I have reached the end of my journey. I will fill these pages with as much information as I can, in the hopes that it will somehow, with the grace of God, reach benevolent eyes.
Let's start off by saying that if you're looking for Arkham Horror Light, then this isn't it. A game will still take you a couple of hours to play. Maybe not as long as a good game of Arkham Horror, but not really any shorter either. Now, the premise of the game is that, like in Arkham Horror, one of the ancient ones is on the rise, and it's your job to travel the globe to unravel the mystery and stop the big bad from waking up and devouring the globe. Quite similar to Arkham Horror, but with a global feel. If you're an Arkham Horror player, then this game will really be a snap for you to pick up and start playing. You have your many decks of cards of different sizes, so you'll still need a good-sized playing area to play. I'm just panning around here. You've got all those decks up there. You've got stuff on the side, and then here, this is just 2 players set up in this example 2-player game. The board is a map of the globe connected by either rail, boat, or an overland path. Let's zoom in a little so you can see. Oh, look, all of those are water. Oh, no, they're not. So here, all these routes are connected. This is the blue lines are water routes. This yellow dotted line, that is a land route, and then there's also railroad routes. Every space on the board is numbered, and it's either a water, wilderness, or a city space, depending on the little picture. See the little sailor guy? That's water, wilderness, and then down here, if you can see, is a city space. Also the big spaces, too. When you have an encounter on one of these generic small spaces, then you'll draw a card from the generic encounter deck and read the one that corresponds to which space type you're on. This is the generic encounter deck. See, it's got a city, wilderness, water. You just draw one, city, wilderness, sea, and read the encounter for that space. Some of the spaces are these larger named spaces, and these have their own set of encounter cards depending on the color of the space. We have basically 3 different colors of spaces. Let's zoom back out. You can see over here we've got green. Over here we have orange, and over here we have purple. And there are different decks corresponding to each one of those. These larger spaces are also where the gates and monsters will pop up during the course of the game. They're quite similar to the locations in Arkham Horror. So there are 4 ancient ones to choose from, and each one has their own specific setup and decks of cards that go along with them. There's 4 mystery cards with each ancient one, and you'll typically be called upon to solve 3 of these in order to win the game. The ancient one cards tells you where the doom marker starts on the doom track. Yes, there's no escaping the doom track. And it also tells you the conditions for winning the game. When 3 mysteries have been solved, investigators win the game. When Cthulhu awakens, flip this sheet. So, let me just go over everything on this card here. This is the cultists. So all the cultists in the monster cup have no real values to them, but they change depending on which ancient one you're going. So this one here, for Cthulhu, there's no willpower test when going against the cultist, and they each have a toughness of 1 and an attack and a strength of 1. So there's no, let's see, setup. Set aside 1 Deep 1 monster, 1 Star Spawn monster, and all Cthulhu special encounter cards. And this is the special setup instructions for building the Mythos deck. Now, you don't use every Mythos card in every game. There's 3 different color deck types of Mythos cards. There's the yellow and the green, and there's blue cards. Some are harder than others, and this tells you how to set them up during each stage of the game. So you would build in stage 1, you have 2 yellow, 2 blue. Stage 2, 1 green, 3 yellow, no blue. Stage 3, 3 green, 4 yellow, 0 blue. So you just stack those all up so that the stage 2 is on top of stage 3, stage 1 is on top of stage 2, and you end up with your Mythos deck for the game. There's lots of ways to lose the game. The way to win the game, at least with Cthulhu, is to solve 3 of the mysteries. So here are the mystery cards. And what happens is when you start the game, you flip one of these up. And this card says, when this card enters play, spawn the Cthulhu Epic Monster on space 12. At the end of the Mythos phase, if the Cthulhu Epic Monster has been defeated, solve this mystery. So you're going to go through and you're going to want to solve each mystery as it pops up. Just so happens that this one in particular is for an epic monster called Cthulhu. And yes, there are epic monsters in the game, and they're spawned by special cards. Here's the epic monster for Cthulhu, or however it's pronounced. You can tell it's an epic monster because that corner's missing. And they're not easy to beat. A willpower -1 test, and they have 4 willpower. Woo! 4 sanity points. That's tough. Strength -2. Woo! And there's other stuff as well. So that would get spawned on space 12. And like I said, all the spaces are numbered. Space 12 is right down there. So we got to go over there and beat him up in order to solve that first mystery. And once the first mystery is solved, we flip the second mystery. Now, to lose the game, if the doom marker reaches 0, that's up here at the top of the board. If it reaches 0, Cthulhu wakes up. And then you flip him over, and each ancient one has different things that happen when you flip them over. Some are really bad. Cthulhu, you actually get a chance to keep playing before he kills you. But instead, you start losing like 1 sanity per turn or per time that the doom marker is supposed to move. So it's not that easy to do. So additionally, there's this omen track that you mark with this little ring-looking token. You can see it up here in the corner. Here's his little ring token. It goes on this omen track. And different mythos cards will tell you to move the omen marker down the omen track. And when that happens, then you look at every gate that's on the board. And here's what a gate looks like. It's quite similar to Arkham Horror gates. You see the little omen symbol at the bottom? There's different ones. And this one says Istanbul, so this one would be opened in Istanbul, which is up around there. And let's say it matches that. So for every gate that matches the omen symbol that just got moved, the doom marker goes down one space. So if you have a lot of gates open on the board, you know, that can be bad. It can really start to accelerate the end of the game. Very neat, though. There are reference cards that you use to give you some basic information in the game, depending on the number of players. So for 2 players, when the rules tell you to spawn a gate, you would spawn 1 gate. If it says spawn a clue, you'd spawn 1 clue. If it says there's a monster surge, that's 1 monster surge. It goes up, of course, for the number of players. See, so for 7 players, you'd spawn 2 gates, 4 clues, and then a monster surge of 3. Woo! The clues are a little different this time. They look regular on that side, but on this side, they're actually numbered. So you would draw, when it says place a clue, you draw the clue, you look at the number, and then you place it in that numbered space on the board. When you go there, you can look at the, you have to have an encounter to get that clue. And that would be using the special encounter deck for Cthulhu. See, it's got the little clue marker on here. So you would move yourself to the space where the clue is. And then you would have that encounter during your turn. And if you are able to solve that encounter, you get to take the clue token. So it's not as easy to get clue tokens in this game. And they can be really important because most of the mysteries involve you getting clue tokens in specific ways. So this one was like an aberration here. Another one of Cthulhu's mysteries says, when this card enters play, move each clue on the game board to the nearest C space. After an investigator resolves a research encounter, he may spend 1 clue he gained from that encounter and place that clue on this card. At the end of the mythos phase, if there are clues on this card equal to the number of players, solve this mystery. So see, these clues become really important. There's 12 investigators to choose from, and they each have their own special abilities and stats. And they're all set. You don't change them. There's lore, influence, observation, strength, and will. The stats, they're all set, but you can possibly increase them during the game through various cards. There's also items and spells and conditions that you can buy, cast, or be inflicted with as you see fit. A turn consists of every player taking their actions, which include traveling, preparing to travel, which earns you a ticket that you can move to an adjacent space as like an extra movement. Acquire assets, which is rolling tests against your influence skill and buying items from the asset space on the board. See, here are these like items that are available for purchase on the board. And you have to roll to see if you can actually purchase that. You could also take out a bank loan, which gives you 2 points to spend on here. But then, of course, you have this bank loan that you will have to pay back eventually. It gives you a debt condition. So all these weird conditions in the game. And they're really kind of cool because, for example, here's a debt condition. Okay, if as a local action, like a special action that you can do, you can test your influence, and if you pass it, you can discard this card. So your debt would be gone. However, if one of the mythos cards pops up and has this little symbol on it, every card in the game that has that symbol on it, that occurs. So you would have to go to this, and you see you've got this little symbol. Some men have come to collect your debt. Flip this card. On the back of the card it says, the men wear a hat and a brown trench coat. We do not want money, he hisses and grabs your throat. You feel as if a part of your identity is being stolen from you. Make a willpower test. If you fail, a fragment of your soul is ripped away. Lose 3 sanity. Then discard this card. But if you pass, well, you're good then. And there's different deck conditions too. It's not just that one card. So different conditions for the same condition have different things happen on the back of them. So you don't really know until you flip that card over what's going to happen, which is pretty cool. And a lot of cards are like that. Even the spells are like that. All kinds of things. You can also rest, which earns you 1 health and 1 sanity back. You can trade with someone who's in your space, or perform one of the special actions listed on your character card or your item cards. So, for example, Leo Anderson here, who has 6 sanity and 6 health, he's got an action, test your influence. If you pass, gain 1 ally asset of your choice from the reserve or from the discard pile. So this is a reserve, and we have no discard pile yet, so he'd have to wait until one actually came out. An ally actually came out, and then he could use that. But that could be his action. You also start with different cards. For example, he starts with this Hired Muscle card, and this is an ally. You gain 1 strength, you may re-roll 1 die when resolving a strength test. Kind of comes in handy. You can get 2 actions in your turn, and they can't both be the same action. So you can't move twice, do 2 travel actions. But if you have a ticket, you can move once and then turn in your ticket, move again. Then you still get an additional action. Next, each player has an encounter on their space. This would be a good time to mention the expedition. This is the expedition over here. Okay, they're in the Himalayas. Why are they in the Himalayas? Because when I shuffled this expedition deck, this is the card that landed on top, and it shows a picture of the Himalayas space on it. So the rules say place the expedition in the Himalayas. As you can see, there are different backs on the cards. So meanwhile, while you're trying to save the world, there's this expedition out there kind of doing their own kind of thing. And you can go and meet up with them and have a special expedition encounter by drawing one of those cards, and then things happen. Crazy things. I'm not completely sure of the purpose of the expedition. I think they're just some fun, different way to have an encounter on the board. And then finally, you have the mythos phase, in which you draw a card from the mythos deck and follow all of the instructions on it. So, for example, this one tells you to move the omen marker to the next space. So you would do that, and then you would move the doom counter, if applicable, based on the gates and the new symbol. You would resolve everything that had this little symbol on it. Like even Cthulhu has that little symbol on him. Right? So he says, each investigator on a C space that does not contain an Eldritch token places an Eldritch token on his space. What you also have to remember, though, is when an investigator moves onto a space containing an Eldritch token, he becomes delayed or loses 1 sanity. Delayed basically is like losing your actions. A lot of monsters have little symbols on them as well. So you can, they're all over. Some of the cards have little symbols on them. Even you could have a little symbol on you. It's just crazy. And then this last one tells you to spawn a gate. So then you would spawn a gate by picking one out of the pile, flipping it up. Oh, Shanghai. Oh, we already did that. All right, let's pick the next one. Rome. Yeah, I hear it was built in a day. Event. Each investigator loses 2 sanity and gains a madness condition unless he spends 1 clue. So, see, there goes that hard-earned clue that you were attempting to get. And then that would be resolved, and then you would go on to the next turn. At the beginning of their turn again, the players would get to do 2 actions again. So that would involve, say, moving to an adjacent space, like the Amazon, having an encounter. Okay, I'm going to have an encounter here at the Amazon. It's got a little wilderness thing on it. So I pull from the generic deck and read wilderness. Past where your campfire allows you to see, you hear voices chanting. You try to draw a protective sigil in the ground. Roll your lore. test. If you pass, the next morning you find evidence of cult activity that you can use to identify the cult members, gain 1 clue, or improve your influence. If you fail, gain a cursed condition. Oh, cursed conditions suck. And they happen a lot. More often than blessed, that's for sure. So he would need to pass a lore test. So his lore is 2. That means he gets 2 dice. He's got nothing to modify that. So he takes 2 dice, and he's got to roll a 5 or a 6. He fails it. So he becomes cursed. Curse you! Put that back in the pile, and we look through here. And we looked for a curse condition. See how easy it is to become cursed? Look, blessed. Hardly ever see that one come up. Cursed. Now it means he has to roll a 6 to pass any test. Only 6s count as successes on your tests. If you would gain another curse condition, flip this card instead. If you would gain a blessed condition, discard this card instead. And on you see this symbol popping up again, roll 1 die. On a 4, 5, or 6, you can discard this card. So that's the only time you can discard it. And that's if you roll a 4, 5, or 6. So you're stuck with that. Yay! So that was his action. And his encounter. See, he skipped the other player's whole movement and action phase and went straight for his own encounter. That was not very nice. You are grounded, mister. That's basically how you play Eldritch Horror. Great game.
In truth, this is not a difficult game to play, especially if you have Arkham Horror experience. There is a book of rules and an additional reference guide that provides more detailed explanations on the concepts in the game. The back of the reference guide has a quick reference that comes in really handy. I think that this game is excellent, although sometimes I do feel like the odds are just too stacked against me. It isn't easy to win, although the times I have won were with 4 or 5 players. I haven't played with a full complement of 8 players, so I'm not sure where the game stands on that point. I get the feeling that it would make for quite a long game. They do include rules for increasing or decreasing the difficulty, but I never pay attention to those, do you? I mean, if I can't win at normal difficulty, then I assume that either I stink at the game or the game is just too difficult. So far, I've been having a great time, and I'm assuming that my multitude of losses is due to my learning curve. With 1 or 2 players, it's a pretty difficult game. Many times it will still come down to the luck of the draw. I played a 2-player game in which we placed the final token on the mystery card. According to the rules, if we make it to the end of the mythos phase, we would win the game. However, when it came down to the time to draw that final mythos card, it advanced the omen token, which in turn advanced the doom track, and we ended up losing the game. That was frustrating as we were right there, and we still lost. The funny thing is, it made me want to play another game right away. It would have been nice if they had included a few more cards. There are only 4 ancient ones, and most of the encounter decks only have 8 cards each. It just seems to me like there could have been a little more to keep the variety going a bit longer. Also, it seems that FFG has completely given up on providing you any easy means of storage for their games. There aren't even any Ziploc bags included with Eldritch Horror. A cloth monster bag would have been nice too. It feels a bit like a no-frills game. Does everything have to be an add-on? Sure, I can get my monster bag and Eldritch dice from my Arkham Horror box, but lots of games already come with custom dice and a cloth bag, and they're still reasonably priced. As a final note, Fantasy Flight Games has already released an FAQ for Eldritch Horror, which I recommend you download if you pick up this game. With this many cards, there are bound to be clarifications and corrections, and the initial ones have already been addressed in the FAQ. Well, I fear that they're almost upon me and I'm out of time. Regardless of these quibbles of mine, I still think that overall, Eldritch Horror is a great new thematic entry into the Lovecraftian universe from Fantasy Flight Games. Fans of other games in this line will not be disappointed. Thanks for joining me in this review. Let me know if you found the review helpful by leaving a comment or sending me an email at Elliott_Miller@voiceofe.com. Make sure to subscribe to the Voice of E channel on YouTube, like the Voice of E on Facebook, and visit our website at voiceofe.com, as I'll have plenty of gaming, entertainment, and comic book coverage this year. And it should be a lot of fun. Thanks again, and until next time, keep your mind free